What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today it is Mock Draft Monday, and y'all know what time it is. It's a 2-round no trades of mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to all that fun YouTube jazz. We are on the way to 10K, almost at 9K, which is absolutely amazing because that was my goal for the end of the year, and we have a whole month to be able to accomplish that. So let's just try to push for 10 just for fun. Below my face is my board. Below that is all the ways you can get connected with the show, as well as take advantage of our 2 sponsors. Links are also in the description. Let's get on with this. Again, there's going to be no trades. Normally, if I have the Cardinals in the top 2, I would probably have a potential trade out there. I'm probably not going to play with that idea. So we'll see what happens. There's always just like one trade exception, and that is like the minute one if it's like so obvious why a team would trade up. But let's get on with this. Picking number 1 overall, we have the Chicago Bears. And I am going to have something interesting tomorrow because I usually don't go quarterback for the Bears. But if they cannot trade Justin Fields, it doesn't really make sense for us to take a quarterback, right? So I really want to factor that potentially into tomorrow's video because I haven't done one where the Bears have gotten a quarterback in a very, very long time. And I still like Justin Fields. Don't get me wrong. I really do like him. That's why I'm perfectly fine 98% of the time not taking a quarterback here. But if we're not going to be electing to take a quarterback, it is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Chicago Bears. So number 1 overall, Marvin Harrison Jr. Some people will say, oh, wide receiver doesn't go number 1 anymore. I mean, to be honest, just because it hasn't doesn't mean it won't. Doesn't mean it shouldn't. Marvin Harrison Jr. you can't find someone with a similar talent level to Marvin Harrison Jr. in this class. Some people might want to say Malik Neighbors, and honestly, the more I've watched Malik Neighbors, the more he's impressed me. So that's why he's ascended up my board exponentially. I really like Malik Neighbors, but he doesn't come close to someone who's 6'4", 205 pounds. It's just a do-it-all type of guy. And you talk about Keon Coleman. He is role-specific as well. There's nobody who is genuinely as polished as Marvin Harrison Jr. And the fact is, I think he can complement DJ Moore perfectly. He adds that extra size element in there. I just believe that that would be a nasty 1-2 combo for the future, regardless of who the quarterback is going to be. At pick number 2 for the New England Patriots. I thought I was really low on the Patriots this year. I think I had them in the top 5, and I got flamed for it. I mean, granted, injuries are one of the reasons the Patriots are here. I think if Christian Gonzalez were out there, maybe they'd steal a win or 2 here and there. But since we're sitting here, the right thing to do is go after a quarterback. And some people try to say Caleb Williams doesn't have actual leadership capability because he's crying in his mom's arms and, he's saying he wants to cuddle with his dog. Maybe he doesn't have like a Bill Burr level of humor, but, he's still a guy who he definitely galvanized the locker room. I have not seen his teammates or his coaches not believe in him. That to me matters a lot more than my public perception of him. Granted, yeah, would it be nice to have your Jalen Hurts CEO type of quarterback where, they're able to face a press conference and absolutely wow America? Sure. But not everybody has everything, right? I mean, for a while we talked about Patrick Mahomes sound like Kermit the Frog. So, there's ways for us to get used to people being not exactly the player or the person that, is the ideal, like creme de la creme type of person. But Caleb Williams has the best playmaking ability probably that we've seen. And I've taken Drake May to the Patriots so many times at this point that it's nice to get a nice little breath of fresh air. Caleb Williams will be selected here. The talent level is through the roof. Yes, he's had his struggles, but he's also had some poor offensive line play, which is translatable to the NFL. And his playmaking ability is unlike anybody else's. It's better than Drake May's, but Drake May has unbelievable playmaking ability. We're talking about someone who could be in that Patrick Mahomes tier of playmaking, and that's truly special. Granted, probably not the best time to talk about it after Sunday Night Football when it didn't really work out. Anywho, pick number 3 for the Cardinals. This is the one pick I'm still debating on trading because I don't think I would take a quarterback here with Washington because you see what, Sam Howell could be something really special. And he has those games where it's like, oh my God. So naturally speaking, I do want to have a small move up here. And for the players I would take for the Cardinals, it really is possible for me to get them even down here in this tier. So, with Drake May on the board, I have always one trade exception. I was going to try to not do it in this video, but, there's no way I'm going to have Drake May fall past pick 5. Just honestly, I can't see that being a possibility. So I'm going to be very nice. I've been being very nice to this team for a while now. I'm going to continue being nice for the Giants. And for the Cardinals, we will be snagging a second round pick. And then you could continue to load up the picks whichever way that you would like. But for me, I'm naturally just going to do a 1-2, 1-3. Like, it might end up being, we have to toss in, Houston's third round pick. It's not going to affect this mock draft. Do your own negotiating, right? So for right now, that is the way that we are going to rock the one trade in this entire mock draft. But the New York Giants move up for Drake May. I think it's the biggest needle mover. You could get extra wide receiver help, get offensive tackle help, and, you could even get defensive back help, right? Like, your safety core could actually use some help there. So there is ways, especially if this isn't possible, for you to have that happen. But, can you honestly say Tommy DeVito is going to be a playoff level quarterback? No. Can we talk about how Daniel Jones is not really a Super Bowl quality quarterback? Yes, we can definitely have that conversation. So why not raise the bar? Now, there are some issues with the cap, but ultimately what you have to do is make the move that's best for your franchise. And having a quarterback like Daniel Jones, who is probably a top 20 quarterback in the NFL, but not good enough to get you to a Super Bowl, is going to put you, it's unfortunate to say this as like a Steelers fan, in the consistent perpetual mediocrity cycle. And you're not going to be good enough to win, but you're not going to be poor enough to be losing at a consistent rate with Daniel Jones as your QB. Even though you have been in that situation before. But I'm trying to be very positive here on Daniel Jones. Drake May gives you a chance to win the Super Bowl. And that's kind of what you need to be trying to strive to go after. But at pick number 4, Washington. Some people want to go Brock Bowers. I say that offensive line is absolute butt cheeks. Regardless of who the quarterback is going to be, what you need to have is a consistent offensive line. And for me, I'm going to look at Joe Alt here. I know that the left tackle side is honestly better than the right tackle side at the moment. And looking at it, I could try to snipe someone like Jordan Morgan, but you're putting a lot of pressure on the luck of the board falling with a tackle being able to fall out of the first round and past the Patriots. And I just don't think that's very likely. So we need to secure the best left tackle or the best right tackle on the board. I think the value is going to be more consistent at left tackle than right. You can't go wrong with either of these players. I'll go with Olu because I think he'll have a year to develop. We will try to address right tackle as well, though, because this team needs both. Right tackle is more desperate, but I think the ceiling is higher on the left tackles not named Talise Fuaga. And Talise is not ready to play day one versus that Eagles front. So I'd prefer to take a year to develop Olu Fashanu than throw Talise to the wolves, so to speak. At pick number 5 for the Chicago Bears, we have taken Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1. Brock Bowers is extremely intriguing at this point. I do see that based on your roster, tight end number 1 is not a concern. I like Cole Kmet. You could end up having Brock Bowers be in the slot, and this would be essentially a Madden-level roster. But we're not in the game for a Madden-level roster, right? So you could look to target an edge rusher here. I don't think that's a bad idea. When looking at it, it depends if you re-sign Jalen Johnson. This could be even a cornerback selection if everything goes to hell. I think a true defensive interior pick like Jer'Zhan Newton isn't out of the blue either. Like, it is something you could go after, especially given how Gervin Dexter has been able to play very well on the outside, or, 5-tech, so to speak. So there's a lot of different ways we can go about this, but ultimately, I like Braxton Jones. I'd rather kick him to that guard rotation and just get someone who's going to be super consistent. I think he has one more year left on his contract after this year, and might as well reset the clock with 5 years of a very consistent high-level offensive tackle, and that is going to be Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. I highly suggest that the Bears should honestly trade out of this pick right here, especially if there is the chance of a Drake May being here. But even Joe Alt, I could totally see a team who's looking for a pure left tackle. You could look at the Bengals, for example, but There are some teams that will most likely at the end of the day be looking for a left tackle, being willing to trade a second round pick to move up with the Chicago Bears. So get your second round pick back, be able to, play money ball, so to speak. And now you can have a lot more because now you have Montez Sweat, Joe Alt, Marvin Harrison Jr. That's essentially your draft class at the moment. At pick number 6 for the New York Jets, Brock Bowers is extremely intriguing. Malik Neighbors, I definitely think even Keon Coleman is a good option for the Jets because wide receiver 2 is not really the best on your team, and I think y'all would agree. However, I'd rather have my quarterback be able to throw to a bummier wide receiver 2 than have a really good wide receiver 2 be praying to God that they get open before someone gets absolutely blown up there at the quarterback position. I'm going to go J.C. Latham here out of Alabama. We're having a quick run here on the offensive tackles. J.C. Latham to the Jets at 6. So JC had a wonderful game versus Georgia. He allowed a sack. That's because Milroe ran right into it. That guy needs another year. I hope to God he doesn't come out. Just naturally, I don't think he's ready for the NFL, but that's a conversation for the next 2025 mock draft, which I did post one about a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. So feel free to check that out as well. JC Latham around that 330 to 360 pound range because there's multiple different figures. I don't understand why we can't just get one figure on what their actual weight is, but he's a big ass dude. Very athletic. He's improving year over year. He is my number 19 player and most likely will be climbing up. This class, I've fallen in love with a lot of players, and that's honestly spectacular. A lot of them are also somewhat juniors, and they could return to be top 5 players in the next class, top 10 players in the next class. I'm a little bit worried about who's going to be staying and who's going to be going. But for the time being, we'll enjoy the fact that I have 16 blue chip players, which does not happen. Blue chip or higher. Regardless, at pick number 7 for the Cardinals, I was evaluating your roster yesterday. I actually was doing this for the majority of teams and looking at what you guys need the most. And wide receiver actually is not a bad position to target, to be fair. I do think a sneaky selection here would be Keon Coleman to be a true wide receiver 1 on the boundary and then pair him up with the rest of the gadget guys that you have. It could actually work very, very well. And I would love to hear y'all's thoughts about that down in the comment section below. The defense definitely needs help. Again, we have 4 picks in this mock draft to be able to address those positions respectively. And defensive interior, definitely a position I'm going to be honing in on. Like that could be the pick I go with here, but I do want to change things up a little bit. I do. And naturally speaking, you have some really good wide receivers on the board. And our target at number 2 used to be Marvin Harrison Jr. So now we acquired a second round pick and a future first, right? And we still get Keon Coleman. That to me sounds like a good deal. And I would love to hear, because I know y'all are very vocal. I want to hear what y'all think about that. Because I have never really gone after wide receiver apart from Marvin Harrison Jr. in the first. But when looking at your roster, I think it could use somebody who is a pure X build like Keon Coleman. I think that would be a smart move so long as we play the rest of the draft out properly and get the right value for the right players. So I know Brock Bowers could have been a really fun one there. I do think that, it wouldn't be a bad idea remotely. I think he's worthy of being, again, if I'm the Bears, I'm trading out with a team that wants to get Brock Bowers. But Keon Coleman is going to provide a little bit more to this team than Brock because of how good Trey McBride has been. It's a little bit different than the Bears, where I think Trey McBride's honestly better. But, talk about that amongst yourselves. Brock Bowers, still a very valuable selection here. Keon Coleman's just going to be that pure X receiver that you are actually trying to fill the role of. At pick number 8 for the Titans, it's down to Brock Bowers and Talise Fuaga. I am going to still have Amarius Mims returning until he says he's coming out. It's a very strong hunch of mine. Someone who I think could be a top 3 player. Has had injury issues this year. Is an unbelievable player. I naturally think he should return. There is no confirmation of that, just to clarify. But this team does need offensive line, and this is the best run blocking offensive lineman in the draft. And Talise Fuaga, this could be a massive addition. At the same time, Brock Bowers is almost a generational player. It's hard to get someone like Brock Bowers. That's the big roll of the dice. Do you want to solidify the offensive line, or do you want to get more weapons? I've always leaned towards the offensive line route because I think there are enough talented weapons down the line, and there's not enough talented offensive linemen. That's going to be the way I roll. And plus, with the way that he blocks in the run game, Talise Fuaga is going to fit perfectly with the Tennessee Titans. It sucks because I love Brock Bowers. Again, this would be someone who I would have had a team probably trade up for right here with the Cardinals. But, this draft, the order changed significantly. Did not expect him to be slipping. At pick number 9, the Saints need a quarterback. They do. And it's really down to Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels. I've been watching more Jaden Daniels film, especially I've been honing in on that Alabama game because of the fact that a lot of teams, like a lot of really good SEC teams, have played Alabama. It's very translatable. You can see the tape, especially seeing him play against 2 elite tier corners in Kool-Aid McKinstry as well as Terry and Arnold. I'm not fully wowed by Jaden to the point where I put him above Bo. I saw Bo make a stupid mistake in that Pac-12 championship game because, to be fair, I don't know if I would have recognized that a corner was standing on the sideline, but was still in the field of play. And then he came off the sideline, reestablished himself, and he made the interception. So I still think Bo Nix is a better talent than Jaden Daniels. I do. I think Jaden Daniels is a really good quarterback. And if you want Jaden Daniels over Bo Nix, I am not going to stop you. However, in this situation, because I'm the one drafting, I do believe Bo Nix would be just overall a better quarterback for the Saints. Also, the Saints don't really draft LSU guys, so it also kind of works that way too. At pick number 10 for the Buccaneers, this is going to also be a quarterback. And I've gone Jaden Daniels to the Raiders a billion times. And because of the fact that, I love Michael Penix too. I have Michael Penix and Jaden Daniels in that same exact tier. So you really can't go wrong with either one. I think Michael Penix fits the offense that the Buccaneers are trying to run now a little bit more. I think Jaden Daniels might be more exciting for an offense. So to shake things up, because that's kind of what I do on Mock Draft Mondays, we got Jaden Daniels going here to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At pick number 11, we still have Brock Bowers on the board, which is absolutely batshit crazy, but it is what it is. These teams just don't need tight end the way that they need a quarterback. And I could have honestly went tight end here, but I do think Cade Otton's doing a good job there over in Tampa Bay. But at pick number 11 for the Las Vegas Raiders, I'm going to be going Michael Penix Jr. Again, it's a very weak quarterback class with some very talented guys at the top. I think the lack of supply of quarterbacks, plus the fact that we actually have really solid ones at the top, just makes it that much more worth it to take them early and often. So 5 quarterbacks go in the top 11. And again, unfortunately, most of the teams that are here are in kind of big need for a quarterback. The Chargers go Brock Bowers. I don't feel like I need to explain that too much. He should be a top 5 selection, but he ends up slipping here in this simulation. Brock Bowers is just a super special talent. Great after the catch. He's a super weapon. Kellen Moore, if he doesn't become a head coach, is going to absolutely adore using Brock Bowers. He was a big fan of tight ends there when he used them in Dallas, and he's going to be able to get very excited about being able to use Brock Bowers here. Sorry, Bengals fans, that would have been a really fun pick for you. However, we're here at pick number 13. And I think the areas where I would try to develop the most, offensive line, I, again, am having Amarius Mims return in this. It is a hunch, not a confirmed fact, but just for somebody who should be a top 3 player in the draft with their quarterback most likely returning as well. I don't think Carson Beck comes out. It just doesn't feel like everything's lining up for him to come out. Not many players from Georgia are really going to be coming out either. So naturally, I do think that, that's my reasoning as to why he's going to go back. So the Bengals, I could see them being in the mood for honestly more of an underwhelming selection like Jerzon Johnny Newton. However, with the wide receivers on the board, I could totally see them going after someone like Rome Odunze, who could play that boundary or that slot at that 6'3" frame. Malik Neighbors, hard to pass on him at this point. And I think the next 2 picks will be Malik and Rome, respectively. So it really comes down to what you're looking for. I haven't been fully wowed by Rome just yet. Malik is popping off a lot more to me than Rome is. A.D. Mitchell's a sleeper pick as well to be in the top 20. Got to give that guy a shout out because he's done an incredible job. I think that you can't go wrong. But if you're trying to replace T. Higgins, Romo Dunze is going to be more of your guy. If you want to go after someone who would probably replace someone like Jamar Chase, I think Malik Neighbors is going to be more up that alley. So I'm going to go Rome Odunze here for the Bengals, and I'm going to go Malik Neighbors here for the Bills. So Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors go back to back. Again, Rome Odunze to replace T. Higgins. Malik Neighbors because the Bills need to grab a wide receiver too for the future, and the value is just too good on a high upside elite athlete like Malik Neighbors. At pick number 15 for the Denver Broncos, Russ has been cooking. He had a little bit of a stumble in last game, but they seem to be a very streaky team. There's a couple routes that I would advise them to go. So they're still the top corners on the board. I do believe that this team should at least be in the market for a top tier corner because one, you don't know if Patrick Surtain will probably be there for the long run. Kool-Aid McKinstry could be a great one for that. Or you want to have a true corner too for the future. Either way, you're going to be winning by taking a corner here. You could look at edge rusher. I think this team felt comfortable with their edge room. Wide receiver, this team definitely needs wide receiver. Looking at the ones who are available, I'd feel comfortable with potentially drafting a guy down the board than anything. If you have a Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze on the board, I personally would go after Johnny Wilson, but I also know that's extremely unrealistic. So that's why I also don't go after it. Troy Franklin would be a good receiver. I think this team is primed for a massive trade down to acquire a second round pick and still select someone like an A.D. Mitchell. I think that'd be very bright. But if you have to stay here, you need to get your best value out of this. Leatu Latu, Jerzon, Johnny Newton, those guys could be worth it. But I think Kool-Aid McKinstry, who could be that boundary corner number one for you, and will definitely be a great corner number two, is a very quality selection at number 15. I have Terrion Arnold above him, but Kool-Aid has been playing the number one wide receivers. So I got to give credit and the nod to Kool-Aid. At pick number 16 for the Seattle Seahawks, a quarterback would be the way I like to rock. I know that there's been some good momentum from Geno Smith, but how long can that sustain? That's the real question. So quarterback no longer an option. Looking at other routes that this team could take. Defensive interior. I think given the fact that you might not even re-sign Leonard Williams, Jerzon Johnny Newton is incredible value. Also, I hate to say it to my Cardinals fans, we're also going to take him away from the Cardinals. We're also going to take him away from the Rams. Playing defense, no pun intended because he's on the defense, against your own division is a very smart thing to do. I wouldn't want to face Jerzon Newton twice a year, every single year. Therefore, I would love to torment the offensive lines of the Chargers and the Cardinals. Not Chargers, the Rams and the Cardinals with Jerzon Johnny Newton. At pick number 17 for the Los Angeles Rams, edge rusher's probably the way I'd like to go based on the value that is available. My next top player on my board is Dallas Turner, then Braylon Trice, and then Terrion Arnold. So could look at defensive back here. But I do think the Rams have been actually very wise with their selection so far in the secondary down the board. They don't need to force one here. So looking at the options available, I think edge is probably the best way to go. And I'm going to go after Jared Verse here or Leatu Latu. I want to go after someone who's above 250 pounds. I think Braylon Trice is a great choice, but I doubt that he'd go above these two. Jared Verse is 260 pounds. He's actually coming off a really good game versus Louisville. I can't imagine seeing Byron Young paired up with a better player than Jared Verse. Just spectacular talent, honestly. He's able to drive back interior offensive linemen. That was one of the best showings that I've seen from Jared Verse, where he hasn't really gotten that much credit for how damn good he was playing. And he's still getting credit, but it's another level when you look at Jared Verse at the moment. At pick number 18 for the Cardinals, we've now drafted Keon Coleman, which I already know I'm probably going to get shredded on that one. I'm going to actually opt to go after a corner here. I don't think defensive interior value is good enough, and I still have one of my top 10 players on the board at number 8, Terrion Arnold. I think he is spectacular. One of the smartest corners I've ever studied, my highest graded corner. So yeah, I'm taking him as the second corner, but he is my highest graded corner. He is an elite run defender. He literally did a spin move block shed versus the run and made a tackle. Like, this guy was playing almost like an edge rusher as a pure corner. He's very physical. He has one key weakness, and that is these 45-degree cuts. So slants, posts, corners. That's his weakness. There's an easy solution for this. Shade him inside. Literally just make sure the wide receiver has to go into him on those 45 cuts. I saw it with Joey Porter Jr. That's how he rebounded in that Purdue game versus Charlie Jones, who did those slants against him and were having a lot of success. Terrion Arnold can have the same success from that way. I actually comped Terrion Arnold to Joey Porter Jr., maybe 95% of him, because I think JPJ is the smartest player I've ever seen on the field. Terrion Arnold might be the second smartest corner I've ever seen. Like, genuinely unbelievable football IQ. Great player. Just, again, has one critical flaw, and that's honestly really good, because that's one thing that you can, use to your advantage when, game planning with him and saying, hey, we're going to do this to reduce your one flaw, rather than having a bunch and just saying, hey, we're going to weight this a little bit more. It's going to be pretty easy to put Terrion in the best position, and I trust Gannon to do so. At pick number 19 for the Atlanta Falcons, edge rusher is probably the right way to go for this team. They do have actually quite a few guys in that edge room. Honestly, the corners have been performing very well as well. Even though you got guys like Nate Wiggins on the board who are very, very talented players in their own right, like, you could end up getting better at corner too. But I actually shamed a recent wide receiver pick for this team. I think you have one wide receiver in Drake London on roster after this year. That's actually really atrocious. And I just got to call it out as it is. I trust that we could get some extra edge talent or continue developing the ones that we do. But, Emeka Egbuka, I really love Emeka. I think I'm having prospect fatigue with Emeka Egbuka. I got to remember how damn good he is, because, naturally, we've known Emeka's good for a long time. And I'm about to say, like, oh, well, all these edge rushers are significantly better. And they're not significantly better. I think Braylon Trice and Leatu Latu might be the more wise decisions at this pick. But, man, it's hard to pass on them. I'm going to go after the edge route because I have a weird feeling that I'll be able to snipe a very good wide receiver at the next pick. I think Leatu Latu is going to be more of the valued pass rusher over Braylon Trice. They try, based on the fact that Bud Dupree's up for a contract, I'm going to look at somebody who is closer to that 270-pound frame. I know Zach Harrison's on the roster as well, but I do think Leatu Latu is going to be one of those guys that is almost a can't-miss prospect at this point. At pick number 20, we could finally get down to the Green Bay Packers. And again, I just want to clarify, in this simulation, I have a hunch that Amarius Mims will return. That's why I just have not been drafting him, because it puts me in a more realistic situation, in my opinion. Therefore, I think Cooper DeJean, being just such a valuable, versatile safety, is the right way to go. You could actually look to address the right guard position with someone like Graham Barton, because I don't really think, especially with John Runyon up for a contract, that you really, you don't have very much there for the future. But at the same time, this team's so good at sniping talent down the board that I would trust them drafting more Iowa defenders like Cooper DeJean and finding a role for him over time. He's just a really spectacular player and somebody who I would love to have on my team. At pick number 21 for the Minnesota Vikings, with no quarterback options available, again, you got J.J. McCarthy here. He hasn't played up to that level where he's deserving of a first-round pick anymore. He just hasn't. He's kind of been carried by the running back squad, but looking at the options available, I'd prefer to take a swing on a quarterback down the board. The best thing to do for this team might be to go after edge rusher because of the fact that you're losing two of them. And, looking at Chop, Dallas, Braylon, these guys are absolute freaks. It kind of is the best value that you can have. I don't know why center's on here. Bradbury's on contract till 2026. Even the corners, all of them are kind of signed till 2025, 2026, 2027 even. So you don't even need to really go to that route. That's why the Vikings are such a good team and why they're still playoff contenders, because of the fact that, you actually have a really well-built roster. And I think you'll bring back one of the two edge rushers in Davenport and Hunter, and I'm probably going to lean Hunter on that one. I'm actually going to pair him up with Dallas Turner here out of Alabama. Dallas, he is my number 4 player in the class, so got to put that out there. I'm a little bit biased on that one, but he's a high-level run defender at 242 pounds who plays like he's 262. He's an elite edge bender. He really reminds me a lot of Will Anderson. I think people aren't giving him enough respect, maybe except for the CBS guys who draft him in the top 5. But again, this is a very deep edge class in terms of the overall first-round talents, so some teams might feel comfortable waiting and trying to snipe one who might fall. At pick number 22 for the Colts. So I do think wide receiver is a route that you can go. A defensive interior down the line, not a bad idea. Offensive line, not a bad idea. But, looking at it, it's a tough team to draft for. It really is, because you're winning. The thing is, Jalen Jones, who I thought I honestly whiffed on because I had him as my number 2 corner for a very long time. Ended up probably being like my number 4 or 5 corner after testing in the 4.5s. Like, I thought I whiffed on that. I was like, oh, damn. Like, this is not good for me. And, he's been playing really, really well. And you got Flowers there as well. Like, you have a really good roster. So you don't necessarily need a lot. Now, I do think you should upgrade it in that safety core because Tyler Nubin would be a massive addition. I think Graham Barton could be a very versatile offensive lineman that the versatility alone is worth keeping. And he's probably going to start at right guard. He could potentially play right tackle in case of injury. And especially with how run heavy this team should be, that's going to be a very valued asset because unfortunately, run blocking teams do injure their offensive linemen quite a bit. So I'm curious what y'all think about that. Because I think Graham Barton would be a very valued selection. His versatility, especially filling in for injury, he's going to get a lot of reps early on, and you don't really get to find many tackles who have that amount of versatility. But I think I'll still opt for the corner selection right now just because the value is that good. And you got Wiggins here, and you got Kalen King. I think Kalen King's physicality is going to fit a little bit more. Also, he looks really good in a navy blue. I don't know what the exact color name is, but we're going to go Kalen King for the time being. I do know that might ruffle some feathers, but in an NFL where corners also get injured at a very high rate, having more corners is always a smart move. At pick number 23, I also just shot myself in the foot because I could have just went Nate Wiggins for y'all and be like, oh, I got Kalen King again because I love Kalen King to the Steelers. That's probably my one dream selection. I do think the Steelers should eventually ID a quarterback for the future. Kenny's just hurt too often. It's not the talent, it's the injuries. This guy's very unreliable. Again, Amarius Mims in this situation is returning based off of a hunch, not off of actual news. Kingsley Suamataia could actually end up being a very wise selection here. I'm starting to get a little bit more warmed up to him. He's had some issues at left tackle, and I think that Broderick should move back to left tackle, and he could end up being the future at right. I want to throw that out there. I'm not going to make that move today, but at the same time, I do think going after Nate Wiggins or Denzel Burke is the right move for the Steelers. We need to have a future at corner number 2. Pat Pete's getting old. God forbid we ever let Levi Wallace touch the field again. And for the people who get all butthurt of the fact that I put the number 2 corner here and I sent Kalen King to another team, I'd be more than happy to send Nate Wiggins to another team and send Kalen King here. Kalen King is my number 3 corner in the class. Nate Wiggins is not. Nate Wiggins is number 6? He's a really good corner. And I'm happy to send him to my Steelers. But again, I'm not showing my Steelers any form of favoritism because I just purposefully did not give them the one player I really wanted to. But the Steelers do need to get a corner number 2. There's no secret about it. We need to continue developing the secondary because that's the one thing that has been consistently weak on our team. Our defensive line has been great and has bailed us out a lot. Joey Porter Jr. is the future, but we need to have a corner number 2. And Nate Wiggins is a corner number 1 who's very smart in very similar areas as JPJ. He's, in my opinion, honestly just a slightly worse version of Terrion Arnold. But again, really good player. I'm not going to shit on Nate Wiggins. It's just, there's some other players I think are better. At pick number 24, so Houston. We could end up getting edge rusher here. Chop Robinson, developing him with D'Amico Ryans sounds actually like a really fun plan. Could get Graham Barton just to be a super versatile offensive lineman. Could be the Kenyon Green replacement, Kendrick Green replacement. If Juice Scruggs doesn't work out, or I mean, I guess you've actually had a really good job there with Patterson. Graham Barton can play pretty much anywhere. That value is certainly something that could be worth it. But I'm actually probably going to opt for that defensive line route. I do think defensive interior is a way that we could totally rock on this team, and I'm going to wait till the next round to do that. I'm going to take the highest upside player on the board because I trust D'Amico to make the most out of him. So Chop Robinson out of Penn State is going to be the selection for the Chiefs at number 25. Emeka Egbuka is a smart option for this team. If you really want to go balls to the wall, A.D. Mitchell. If you really want to go even crazier, Xavier Legette, or even Troy Franklin, or, down the line, Johnny Wilson. You can't go wrong with really any of these players. I really love the idea of Xavier Legette on this team, though, because, somebody just said he's 6'1". I thought he was 6'3". Yeah, I don't even know what to trust anymore. He kind of does look low-key 6'1", but Emeka Egbuka, again, prospect fatigue is the reason why I haven't been drafting him as high as I have. I really love Emeka Egbuka. And I think he'd be a valued addition on this team. He can play on the boundary for sure. He has a skill set similar to Rashee Rice, but I think a little bit better. Even though I love my boy Raw, pony up, good friend of the show. I'm going to have Emeka Egbuka be a longer-term replacement for MVS and, just have some more consistency in that receiving room. At pick number 26, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. And for me, when looking at the Jaguars, I would consider Graham Barton for the team. I really love Xavier Legette. I just am really sold on them going after a boundary receiver. And it's Xavier Legette and A.D. Mitchell for me for this team. And A.D. Mitchell's been playing so damn well, and I've taken Xavier Legette to this team a billion times. I want to show A.D. Mitchell the respect he deserves. He's been showing a lot more nuance with his route running abilities. Really good after the catch. Definitely should start getting a little bit more of this first round respect. At pick number 27 for the Dallas Cowboys. Center certainly is going to be the way to go. Left tackle as well. Kind of get that both with Graham Barton. Can't really complain. If you want to go for the pure left tackle here, Jordan Morgan or Kingsley Suamataia. But again, I think Kingsley should end up being a right tackle. Graham Barton might end up being a center, but at the end of the day, you're still taking a guy who will be an elite level offensive lineman, and that's worth figuring out at which position. At pick number 28 for the Lions, with Braylon Trice on the board, it's hard to say no. I think edge rusher, defensive interior, corner, that's where we need to rock. Chris Jenkins is great too. I do think there might be better interior defensive linemen available at our next pick over the edge rushers. So I'm actually going to go after my number 5 player in the class, Braylon Trice out of Washington. You're adding another 270-plus pounder as well to that defensive line, who's going to be an elite run defender, very, very good athlete. Overall, just a high-level player. At pick number 29 for the Niners, I'm going to be going for a corner here. And you got some really good ones on the board. I'm actually going to opt for Denzel Burke out of The Ohio State University. He is my number 20 player on the board, and he's done phenomenally to bounce back from his kind of all-right year last year. At pick number 30 for the Ravens, they could use some help on their defensive line. I actually really like the idea of sending another Michigan player to a Michigan defense in Chris Jenkins here. He's very versatile, can also drop weight in case you want to move him around. And I just think he might have the best bang for the buck at this pick. I'm going to pair him back up with, pretty sure your DC was his former DC there in Chris Jenkins. He's a phenomenal player, doesn't get the respect that he genuinely deserves. At pick number 31 for the Miami Dolphins, Xavier Legette would be ridiculous. Can you imagine adding that to the fire? I do believe this team needs to opt for offensive line. And I'm going to go for Kingsley Suamataia here, because either he's going to develop probably for a year at left tackle, or you can put him to right tackle right away, depending on what your needs are. I think the Niners would have been smart to go after tackle, but I go after it so many times that, sometimes nice to opt away from going after the same pick over and over. With the Eagles selection, Kingsley probably would have been my number 1 choice. Again, I'm opting for Amarius Mims to return in this specific mock draft. I could opt for Jordan Morgan here and develop him for a year under Lane Johnson. That does feel like a very Eagles move. However, I want to look at a couple other options here as well. I do think the 265-plus pound edge rusher role is open in terms of the depth role. And JT Tuimoloau is exactly that type of player with that upside that they will be looking for. Hard to pass on him, especially when I do believe it will most likely go to the Washington Commanders. So we're going to potentially play some defense here, and we're going to go JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State to the Philadelphia Eagles. I think it's just the smartest move for Philly because of the fact that you also are taking him away from the Washington Commanders. So at pick number 33 for the Carolina Panthers, unfortunately, not very many great choices apart from Xavier Legette and Troy Franklin and Johnny Wilson on the board. The nice thing is those great selections are right up your alley. I think Xavier Legette is that perfect wide receiver one mold that might eventually develop into it. Worst case scenario, you're getting a high-end elite wide receiver too. He's a fun player to watch. I can guarantee you that. He has some route running, his harsher cuts, like his sharper cuts, not necessarily the best on planet Earth, but he is relatively smooth as an athlete. He's shown the route running nuances that you're looking for, and his speed is ridiculous. It definitely pops off on almost every single rep. At pick number 34 for the Patriots, Xavier Legette would have been nice, but a nice consolation prize is to get a top-tier tackle like Jordan Morgan. At pick number 35 for the Arizona Cardinals, we've already drafted a top-tier corner in Terrion Arnold and a top-tier wide receiver in Keon Coleman. Let's get some defensive interior help in here with Tavondre Sweat, the monster out of Texas, 362 pounds, elite tight end apparently as well. This guy is just an absolute freak show. One of my favorite players in the draft and my number 33 player. He probably will end up going up higher and higher, especially with guys who are going to start returning. At pick number 36, so Commanders, looking at it, Tyler Guyton's probably your best bet at drafting another offensive tackle at this moment. We've already drafted a left tackle in Olu Fashanu. I think we need to draft the high-end right tackle here in Tyler Guyton. Offensive line needs to be fixed. Defensive line, we can pick up dudes down the board and see what the hell happens. But offensive line, that's what needs to be fixed first. Tyler Guyton, Olu Fashanu. Just relax. We got it covered. Now, we got that covered. What's next? We could look at Jatavian Sanders here. That is a potential solid move for this team because tight end could be upgraded. Of course, there are some tight ends out there in free agency. You could probably snag as well. I don't think cornerback's off the board. That's kind of a hot take, but I don't think cornerback is off the board for this team, especially after being carved up like y'all were this past week. You could certainly use a very, very high upside corner here, and that corner is actually Kamari Lassiter. You need the speed to handle some speed in this division and, in the NFL in general. And I don't really think that you have it at this moment. So we're going to go with PFF's number 37 player, Kamari Lassiter. I think it's a unique pick. I haven't picked a corner for Washington, but you should at least have that type of speed on your team because it kind of showed. At pick number 38 for Green Bay, we drafted Cooper DeJean in round number 1. With this selection, hard to not just go two safeties at this point, but Troy Franklin wouldn't be a bad choice. Brian Thomas as well for this team. You could try to opt for another wide receiver to add to this core who's a little bit more reliable, but you could try to go after more someone like Troy Fautanu, where you could see if he ends up working at left tackle, and if he doesn't, he's going to be a really good right guard for you for the future. I actually like that potential. Patrick Paul's not athletic enough for me to trust him. Karan could be the better move because he's the higher upside left tackle with great length. But I love the tenacity of Troy Fautanu. He's a top 30 player for me. I have him listed as interior offensive line, but there's a chance he could play left tackle. And I think it's worth taking a swing on there at 38. At 39, the New York Giants, we moved up for Drake May. And with this selection, you could opt for an edge rusher. There's some really good ones on the board. I could honestly wait till the third round before taking one as well because, these edge rushers are very solid, but I don't think there's many can't miss ones except maybe Jonah Ellis, which I want to get someone who's a little bit better as a run defender, more of a complement to KT rather than, just exponentially boosting the overall vibe of KT. Looking at it, I have two options here I really like, and that's Jalen Polk and Brian Thomas. I love Troy Franklin, but I want someone with a little bit more size. And you know what? I think Brian Thomas is that type of player where I'm going to go back to LSU, grab someone with unbelievable potential. He pops off the screen too. He just needs a little bit more tweaking, but he's essentially Troy Franklin with a little bit less development, but better size and better speed. That's hard to say because Troy Franklin's very fast, but he's just ridiculous. 6'4", 205 pounds, and he's a straight speed burner. At pick number 40, would have been a great pick here for the Titans in Brian Thomas, but you can't really go wrong with Jalen Polk. You can't go wrong with Troy Franklin. You can't even go wrong with Johnny Wilson here. I think Troy Franklin might be the best pick out of them. Jalen Polk's ridiculous as well. I would honestly think he should transfer to another university and end up being a legitimate first round contender. Troy Franklin's such a good player though. This is a tough pick because naturally there are a lot of players, including Tyler Nubin, that I think could be a really valued addition on this team. It's honestly a good problem to have. And we don't really have another pick. We drafted Joe Alt in the first. Or no, we didn't. We drafted Talise Fuaga in the first. Could go back-to-back tackles. I'm not going to do that. I think a wide receiver is needed. You can't go wrong here. And I'll opt for Jalen Polk just because, looking at his size, 6'2", 204, it's a little bit more attractive than, 6'3". Was he 187? Yeah. So it's more built to be what you're looking for. So we'll go with Jalen Polk there to be the longer-term replacement for DeAndre Hopkins. At pick number 41 for the Eagles, I don't want to hear any BS about the Eagles not needing a linebacker ever again. The simple fact is, we don't do that. Guess what? You guys have such a crap linebacker core. I think it's finally time Howie's actually going to start realizing that he's doing great in everything except for linebacker. It's the one position he is not focused on drafting. So I'm going to go Junior Colson out of Michigan here. I am tired of hearing the complaints. You know what? He's an elite tier linebacker. He's a true Mike at 247 pounds at 6'3". This is the guy that you guys need to have. If you want to have a legitimate Super Bowl defense, you need to have a Mike linebacker. And Zach Cunningham, great. Yeah, I'm tired of these one-year rentals, okay? I am tired of the one-year rentals that do like 50% as well as maybe a solid draft pick could do. And every single year, you sometimes can make it to the Super Bowl, and that's great. But how many times are you going to trust that a crap linebacker core is going to pretty much be mitigated by the rest of your defense performing well? You can't continue to believe in that. And Junior Colson is going to be that guy who ends up actually changing that mantra. At pick number 42 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we drafted a quarterback in round number 1 in Bo Nix. Again, if you get your feathers all ruffled there. No, we didn't. We drafted Jaden Daniels. If you have your feathers all ruffled about Jaden Daniels, feel free to change that pick however you like. But I think that this team, you could be looking for that future at wide receiver. Troy Franklin could be that type of player for you. Other positions I would target here, you could look at a right tackle. I don't think there's one that I trust at this moment. Again, Amarius Mims in this situation is returning. He probably would have been a top 15 pick. So where do we go with this team? I don't think running back's a big need. I don't think tight end's a big need. I think interior offensive line could be looked at, but I don't know if the value's there except for Jackson Powers Johnson. I think edge rusher is the right way to go. And with Jonah Ellis, Chris Braswell, Princey Umanmielen, including also one of my favorite players, Xavier Thomas, in the draft, it's a smart move to go after one of the top edge rushers. Chris Braswell is going to have a lot of love, especially coming from Bama, going to be in the playoffs. I think that he's going to be the one who's likely selected. He's going up most likely against that Is he going up against UT? I'm forgetting. No. Oh, he's going up against Michigan. Ooh, I'm stoked to see that game. But he's probably going to have a pretty big game. Well deserving of a mid-second round pick. At pick number 43 for the Las Vegas Raiders, y'all know, especially when I get to see someone like Leonard Taylor falling, it's the route I'm going to go. He has a lot of upside. He just needs to be in the right situation for it. And the Raiders have time, and I think that's going to be more than anything a little bit of a help there. At pick number 44, let's see, who's my next highest player? We got Johnny Wilson and Christian Haynes. After that, who is next? Dwight McLaughlin. God, I love Dwight. Again, having Amarius return in this. Then we got Xavier Thomas, making sure I did not leave out anybody huge. Chargers, we got Brock Bowers. That's great. Now we need a corner number 2. And that's Josh Newton, TJ Tampa, or Dwight McLaughlin, who I have on my list, and I doubt that PFF has him on theirs, and of course they don't. So I think I'm going to opt for Dwight because Dwight deserves the respect. He's going to be one of those players that, just like I knew Talise would continue ascending, I think Dwight will continue ascending unless he returns to school. And so I'm going to opt for that route. Dwight McLaughlin, he is about 6'2", 200 pounds, off-man corner, really good with press, one of the smartest corners, just a really good ball hawk as well. Versus LSU, when they tore him apart, he was the one player that was the lone shining bright spot. So excited to see what he's going to be able to do in the NFL. At pick number 45 for the Cincinnati Bengals, we ended up opting for a wide receiver in Rome Odunze in round number 1. I might want to go Karan Amajaje here because of the fact that I could see a couple other teams developing him that are contenders. Patrick Paul, not necessarily the best player on earth. You could go tight end here, Jatavian Sanders, and end up boosting the team. I think that would be a smart move. I, however, am still going to opt for Karan Amajaje out of Yale, an elite upside tackle who just is, he needs time to develop. He had a season-ending quad injury, will need some more time to get back to himself. At pick number 46, we drafted for the Bills Malik Neighbors in round number 1. We're drafting Tyler Nubin here. Just ridiculous value. It's well worth it. Honestly, for the Saints, I'm going to take Cam Kitchens here as well. We drafted a quarterback in round number 1. We're going to draft Cam Kitchens here in round number 2. This team has both of their aging safeties on 1-year contracts, and the Saints could certainly use that little infusion of youth. At pick number 48 for the Cardinals, we have drafted corner with Terrion Arnold, wide receiver with Keon Coleman, as well as defensive interior with Tavondre Sweat. We're in a good place. That's where we're at. B.J. Ojulari is looking great. So I think going after an edge rusher like Princely Umanmielen would be honestly really nice. At least having a little bit more power to the game. He actually matches B.J. Ojulari very well in terms of that power aspect. And at this point, the value is worth it. So I'm going to go for Princely Umanmielen out of Florida. At pick number 49 for the Los Angeles Rams, what do we go with, y'all, in round number 1? Jared Verse out of Florida State, pairing up with Byron Young. That's a nasty duo. Could look to opt for a corner here, but I am also looking potentially for an offensive tackle. Again, Amarius Mims not going to come out in this simulation. Javon Foster, someone who I think deserves some more credit than he's getting. Dominic Puny, another player I really like. However, I do think linebacker could be the smartest move to go with. I love Peyton Wilson. He's just too injury prone. Edgerrin Cooper's super solid. I don't know if the Rams are going to invest that high of a pick, however, into the linebacker core. I want to look potentially at actually Christian Haynes here. You know, just super valuable player. Jackson Powers Johnson as well. The center route could be explored. Defensive interior, you do have someone like Ruka Roro here and Byron Murphy, who are both very, very talented players. I actually think Ruka Roro should be the move. He's a top 32 player. I had some prospect fatigue on him myself. It was kind of my dream to select him here at number 50 for the Texans, but instead we get to snipe him there with the Rams. Texans, in the first round, we ended up selecting Chop Robinson. At this pick, I find it very hard to pass on a corner 2 because I do think pairing Darren Stingley up with someone for the future, it might be the best return on investment. Other defensive interiors, Byron Murphy would be smart. I doubt that he ends up coming out because I just think he should return and end up being an absolute freak show there. I'm going to go for a corner. I think that going after Josh Newton, staying in Texas and drafting a very consistent day 1 corner is going to be your best bang for your buck. Just, you need to have somebody there for the long run besides Derek Stingley. At pick number 51 for the Atlanta Falcons, we ended up snagging, who do we get for y'all? Leatu Latu in round number 1. I know exactly who's on the board here in round number 2, and that is Troy Franklin to pair up perfectly with Drake London. At pick number 52 for the Green Bay Packers, I am most likely going to select the top running back off the board in Trey Benson. I think that's what this team should be looking for. What we have drafted so far for the Packers is Troy Fautanu, elite offensive lineman out of Washington, as well as Cooper DeJean. So you could just draft another player here in Patrick Paul and see what happens. I honestly might want to see what Rasheed Walker could do over Patrick Paul. So for me, I'm going to opt for this running back route. We're going to go with Trey Benson out of Florida State. The defensive line, I used to go after a pure run stuffer, but forgot about Carl Brooks being an absolute beast. And then you got Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark, and then the massive amount of other edge rushers that you have. This team's super loaded. I'm very excited to see what they can do with a high-tier, healthy running back rotation and an on-to-fire Jordan Love. At pick number 53 for the Minnesota Vikings, we are going to elect to draft J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. Our first-round selection was Dallas Turner, so we get the high-upside edge rusher. Now we get the high-upside quarterback. Could have done the same thing for the Falcons here, but I just don't really like J.J. McCarthy as much as like maybe I wanted to. And, this team, I just doubt that they'll go off Desmond Ridder with the success they've been having. At pick number 54 for the Indianapolis Colts, we ended up opting for Kalen King in round number 1. At this point, we are actually going to go defensive interior with Byron Murphy II. We need some more longer-term guys there on the defensive interior. Adetomiwa Adebawore is great. Byron Murphy will be the successor there to DeForest Buckner. At pick number 55 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, we went Nate Wiggins in round number 1. You could look at offensive lineman here. Again, there's no way Amari Mims would actually be here, so hopefully I don't have to continue explaining that because he's supposed to be returning in this. So looking at Jackson Powers-Johnson, going to be probably the front runner for me at this point. You could opt for a wide receiver. Like Johnny Wilson wouldn't be a freak. Like that'd be honestly ridiculous to see him in silver and black. But looking at other positions, I don't really see many other valuable ones. You could go, if Quinn Ewers comes out, I would have obviously went Quinn Ewers for the Falcons there. So I'm also having him return, but he's actually up in the air at the moment. We're going to go with center here. We're going to go with Jackson Powers-Johnson. I think it's a smart move for the Steelers. The snaps were absolutely butt cheeks this past week as well. Just continue protecting him and getting a high upside, high motor player in JPJ back-to-back round number 2s. Pick number 56 for the Cleveland Browns. Joe Flacco is actually kicking ass there, but looking at the safety core, not really a big fan of it. Xavier Worthy might be the guy who I want to go after for this team. Johnny Wilson as well could just be a unique beast that is hard to track down. Xavier Worthy is the guy who's my front runner at the moment. And to be fair, you do also have some really good defensive interior players. I'm actually going to opt for Mason Smith, 310 pounds at LSU. Don't know if he comes out. Doubt that he does. But if he is here, it's worth letting Myles Garrett see what he can do with a super raw prospect. At pick number 57 for the Chiefs, I ended up going wide receiver in round number 1 with a Mecca. It wouldn't be an awful idea to go back-to-back wide receivers here with someone who could play tight end, because I do think that, unfortunately, the tight end core is not doing too well. And I actually might do that. Again, this is Mock Draft Monday. It's time for experimentation, and I want to be able to see what your thoughts are on this. I'm going to take Johnny Wilson to be the future Travis Kelce for this team. And the amount of explosive weaponry now that this team has, I think that's kind of what it's lacking right now. And Johnny Wilson will be a very valued asset to this team. I know defensive interior is a big issue, but also there are some really good players down the board who I trust in that more than, someone who is my number 11 player in the class. Pick number 58. I know Ezra Cleveland's been performing pretty well, but, with Christian Haynes here on the board, it's hard to say no. Just want to double check. In round number 1, we went A.D. Mitchell. This is a good 1-2 punch. At pick number 59 for the Dallas Cowboys, linebacker is the place I want to rock. Edgerrin Cooper is super versatile. Peyton Wilson, again, he's a top 20 talent, just as injury prone, and on a team that's dealing with a couple of key injuries to their linebacker core, probably a little bit of a turnoff. I'm going to have Danny Stutzman actually return in this mock draft because a lot of people have been saying that's a very high likelihood, and I'm going to respect it. We're going to go Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M here. Very versatile. He is a little bit undersized at 230 pounds, so he probably will be more of a will linebacker, but he's very good overall. You look at the coverage ability, he's one of the best in the country. He's just very consistent, good athlete as well. Well worth selecting and keeping him there in Texas. At pick number 60 for the Lions, we ended up selecting an edge rusher in Braylon Trice in round number 1. With this pick, I cannot go away from TJ Tampa out of Iowa State. Very consistent, rock solid corner who's just been consistent over the past couple of years. At pick number 61 for the Niners, I'm probably going to opt for an offensive lineman here. I did kind of screw you guys over, unfortunately. I wish I might not have. It is what it is. But looking at the guys who are available, Bo Limmer's finally part of this. Let's go. I really like Bo Limmer. He's a guy who I would consider for the Niners at this pick for sure. I actually might want to go Patrick Paul and develop him for a year and potentially kick him to right tackle. He's been one of the highest consistency efficiency rating linemen in all of the country. So we're going to see what he can do here for the Niners. It would have been better, in my honest opinion, to go Quinyon Mitchell at this pick and go Kingsley at the other, but the draft did not fall the way I originally expected it to. At pick number 62 for the Baltimore Ravens, we ended up going after Chris Jenkins in round number 1. You could try to get a larger wide receiver here in round number 2, and I don't think the value is there. We're going to go Quinyon Mitchell for the Ravens. High upside pass, his ball skills are ridiculous, feels like a potential Raven. At pick number 63 for the Dolphins, Jatavian's still here. Do think that he could be, with his after the catch ability, a valued asset on this squad. So we ended up getting Jordan Morgan, I believe, Kingsley in round number 1. We're going to get Jatavian here in round number 2. And ending off the draft with the Philadelphia Eagles, we've drafted an edge rusher and a linebacker, both from the Big Ten. And at this selection, I do think Xavier Worthy was most likely the guy who I'm going to select. However, some other options, you could look at some depth, some guys for potential in DB. Safety-wise, Kalen Bullock is here. Hard to say no to potentially replacing, why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden? Kevin Byard. But, Blankenship's the future. Same thing with Sidney Brown. I think Xavier Worthy, to get that true wide receiver 3 with deep threat ability, is the right way to go. So that is going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the show as always. See you on the far side.